Good morning and welcome to the WIOA webinar. My name is Scott Shook with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. I'll be your facilitator for today's webinar. As a reminder, all participants on the call are in mute mode. Please raise your hand function in the webinar if you'd like to speak during the presentation, or if you have use the question box for any comments or questions. And I would ask you that during the initial part of the presentation, please use the question box for any questions that you might have. I'll read those and make sure that the presenters are aware of the questions. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on Illinois WorkNet's website. Due to the holidays, that won't happen until Monday, but the webinar recording as well as all of the documents presented in the recording will be made available on Monday. With that, I'll turn the presentation over to Mike Baker, who is going to be our from the Illinois Department of Commerce. Mike.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a holiday eve. Please get the word out that is recorded. So if other individuals on your planning teams would like to see this overview, it is available. And if any of your teams are interested in a kind of a one-on-one review of your specific information, we can direct you to your regional economist from IDES, or the state data team would be happy to work with you to make sure that you are have as complete of understanding of this data as we're able to give you. So with that in mind, let's get underway here. So just a quick overview of, hold on, this was working a minute ago. There we go, sorry about that, had to click a screen. We're starting on the basis of Executive Order 3. We've talked about this quite a lot in lots of different venues and situations over the past year. It has a significance for regional WIOA planning in that it calls for alignment and a similar methodology to be used for all of the plans that are workforce or employment related in the state, and there are a handful of those that are out there. But the underlying concepts outlined in Executive Order 3 was that our planning should be data-driven, that we should develop that common methodology that is used across different plans, and identify priority sectors, industries, occupations, and then align them all. So basically, all of the plans need to be working from a similar framework and similar perspective. That's not going to be absolutely 100% perfect, but we think we have it set up so that it can be aligned pretty well. The methodology that we have used both in the state plan and in providing the data to you all for the regional data packets is we started with a business demand-driven focus. Meaning, demand in this respect is what are the skills, what are the occupations, what are the industries that the data says are going to be either growing or have demand or are important in the state, that whether they're growing or not, we need to pay attention to it. Okay, and we'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. Of course, we want to be data informed on our supply and demand analysis. Then we classified sectors in a couple of different manners, and we'll go into that here in a second as well. Once we get everything classified, then we do a qualitative review, make sure, okay, did the data have something in it that we weren't expecting? Is the data tell us something that we just know is not right and requires further research? Things like that. So basically, while we're data-driven, we're not just blindly following the data to say, okay, the data says this, so we're going to do that. If the data says something that we weren't expecting, that just means we need to do a little bit deeper dive, make sure we understand what's going on. Sometimes there are data anomalies that we don't expect. Sometimes the data is telling us something that's really happening that we didn't expect. And the only way to differentiate the two is to do a deeper dive. So some of the things we look at when we were doing the supply and demand analysis and the information that went into your packets. And the things you should all be looking at are, part of the number of workers, the number of establishments, what's the projected change over the next 10 years, what's the location quotient for that industry in your region, how many program completers are coming out, what is the supply. When you're looking at sectors and industries, are they maturing, leading, or emerging? And here are the kind of dry definitions of that. But the easy way to remember it that works for me is, if you are maturing, you've got a big footprint in the state. You've got a lot of workers, you've got a lot of establishments, so much so that your location quotient is above 1 compared to the rest of the country. You have a concentration in that industry or sector that is greater than in the nation. And we'll go into some maps later that kind of show how county by county the location quotient looks for various industries in Illinois. So if you're maturing, you've got a big footprint, but you are not growing, not projected to grow. If you're leading, you've got a big footprint and you're expected to grow. Emerging, smaller footprint, you've got a location quotient below 1, but you are expected to grow. And these things change over time. When we did the state plan last time, manufacturing statewide was maturing. But with the changing economy, this time around, manufacturing, elevated to leading. It's expected to grow. So these things are not static. So just because something has been how it's been in your region for years and years, you need to take a fresh look at what the data is, because these things do change. Okay. So after we go through this maturing, leading analysis, we do a qualitative review, looking at other factors, that help us make sure the data is telling us the right thing. Then we did a triage. Okay, what things turned out to be most likely to have a high impact or medium or low impact on the state's overall economy. And one of the things we looked at was, how are these regions, how do they fall into this maturing, leading, and emerging triage, categorization? How do they look in all the regions? So if an industry was in more regions, it got more points. So we kind of looked at, for the state plan, we looked at how things are happening in your areas to factor into informing the state plan process. So there are 4 main plans out there that I'm aware of that play into workforce development and economic development. There's the Commerce 5-year Economic Development Plan, the WIOA planning that we're doing now, Perkins planning that you're involved in, and then also the Community College Board's Workforce and Education Strategic Plan. So they're kind of the entities that are responsible for working on each of these. Of course, there are organizations and partners beyond the list here for the state plan, but these are the entities that are required by the feds to participate in a unified plan. Okay. A key difference is that the plans in blue are responding to or using the framework for the Unified State Plan and Perkins 5. These are federal plans that require a specific response to specific questions, many of which are specifically data related. Okay. The 5-year Economic Development Plan has the advantage of being more flexible. And they took advantage of that flexibility when creating that plan. We're going to go into that in just a sec. So if you've looked at the Economic Development Strategic Plan, they have grouped industries into these 6 key categories of things that are considered important for the economic development efforts of the Department of Commerce and the state of Illinois for the next 5 years. For the Unified State Plan, just looking at the raw data, we found the data indicate that the industries and sectors shown in blue are leading, and the ones below that in light orange are emerging. Statewide this year, there were no major sectors that fell into the maturing category. As I mentioned earlier, 4 years ago when we did this, manufacturing was maturing, but at this point, it's in the leading category. So basically, the Economic Development Plan took the sectors and industries that we're using for our plan and put them into groupings that made sense from an economic development perspective. So all of the same industries are there on both sides of this equation. They're just grouped a little bit differently is all. So I know we've got kind of a mishmash of lines here, but if you follow along, you can see which sectors industries were drawn from to populate the sectors that were used for the Economic Development Plan. So if you start at the top, agribusiness and ag tech, if you follow that green line, there's a lot of industries from manufacturing counted in there. Also a few from wholesale trade. The only one that was kind of a pure one-to-one was manufacturing. Life sciences, though, you can see, draws from professional and business services, the scientific and technical side, and manufacturing. For example, in life sciences, there are 13 distinct industries counted in that grouping. 11 of those 13 are manufacturing industries. So the point being that really this is just a different way of grouping the same things. So if you're looking at manufacturing, you're also looking at life sciences. So if you're looking at that in your region, you're looking at life sciences. So we would be happy to share, the breakdown of which specific industries went into these groups with folks if you like. But basically, the overarching point is don't get too hung up on trying to figure out what's what. If you're looking at the industries on the right-hand side of this screen, you are by default also looking and taking into consideration the industries and sectors that were identified in the Economic Development Plan. So the point is trying to make this easy on everyone and not try to do a complicated crosswalk of what's where, at least while you're churning all the data. Once you get done, if you would like to do an industry by industry crosswalk, we would be happy to help you with that so that you can kind of speak to both things. But for right now, don't get too hung up on that. So that is the end of my part of the presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to address them now if we just have one or two. Otherwise, I'd like to turn it over to Ron because he has the important stuff that you guys need to see today.
Okay, Mike, we don't actually have any questions.
Super. I'll mute my phone and...
Okay, thanks, Mike. And Scott, everybody can see my desktop now, correct?
Not yet.
Nope.
Were you able to select Ron? There it is. We see you now.
Okay. All right. So we're on there. Okay. Thanks, Mike and Scott, and thank you to everyone that is on the webinar today. Appreciate your participation, and certainly if you have questions, let us hear what you need. We selected the EDR1, the central EDR, for no apparent reason. Just that was the number one, so we selected it. Each of the packets we sort of redesigned the front page a little bit. It's very common to what it was last time. But anyway, let's go ahead on to the data that's in these packets. The first page that we have here, the first, I believe, 16 slides are pretty much all of the demographic data for each of your areas. The population data is here. We've got it from 2010 through 2018. And then on the bottom of the screen, that line is simply the proportion of your region's population compared to the state, or the percentage of your area of the state, okay? Like in this case, 4.32% in 2010 was the portion of the EDR1 of the state population, and it's dropped down to 4.19% of the total population of the state in 2018. So that's how that one reads. The other thing that I would tell you is on the left, or excuse me, on the right is each of the county population totals for your area. On to the next slide. What we have here are the largest cities that are actually in each of the regions and the population of each. Pretty self-explanatory. Moving on to the next one. And again, this is just stuff to help you, show you how all the different breakouts, the demographic breakouts in your area. This particular slide here is age of the population, what percentage is at what age level. There's a lot of different breakouts here, so should be some useful information. On to the next slide. We have educational attainment of the population. On the left, you can see is the Illinois population, educational attainment of the Illinois population, and then on the right is your specific EDR. And then those are the percentages in the bar charts. And then along the bottom, you can see the actual numbers of folks in your area, that what the educational attainment is of them. In this particular EDR, the way that I would use this is look the less than ninth grade education, the statewide total is 5%, only 3% in the EDR1. 35% of the population has a high school graduation or equivalent compared to 26% of the statewide. A little bit higher in some college. The associate's degree is the same as the statewide, and then you can see we're a little bit lower in this area on the percentage of people with bachelor's degrees, as well as the percentage of people with a graduate or professional degree. Keep in mind, the statewide totals are heavily influenced by the Chicago area, and that's where a lot of the larger businesses are in the state, and that's probably a good reason why the statewide totals are above in both the bachelor's and graduate or professional degree. On to the next slide. We gave you some information here on the regional veteran population, and in this particular area, there's 40,510. And below is just a breakout, an age breakout, what area or what era they were a veteran of. And then we also have ethnicity data on the bottom left, and then educational attainment of those veterans on the bottom right. On the next screen, we have, this is our disabled population by age and type, okay? The total number of people that have some type of disability was 75,661 in this region. We have an age breakout on the top part of this, and then the types of disabilities of these folks on the bottom part. The next slide, we have more data on the languages spoken at home. English only, obviously, is the highest percentage here in the central region. And then you have some of the other ones over to the right: Spanish, other Indo-European, Asian Pacific Islander, and then just an other category. The next slide, just to give you an idea of the types of degrees that the people in this region, the central region, are holding. In Illinois, as you can see up and above, Illinois, 33% of individuals 25 or older hold at least a bachelor's degree, which is higher than a national figure of 31%, and the graph below shows the field of study chosen by these individuals. So don't be confused. These are the numbers for each of your regions, okay? 29.7% of the bachelor's degrees in the central region are in science and engineering, okay? That's how this is to be read. The next one, this is pretty self-explanatory as well. We've broken out the median income by individual counties, and there's several different categories here. There's married couples with children, male household with children, female household with children. On the next page, we got African American households, American Indian, and Asian households. And I would tell you all that if you question any of the data that's in any of these, please let us know, and we'll do a double check on it. And if there's an outlier in any of these, we'll certainly check. And this one right here I'm looking at, Macoupin County, that would be an outlier. Not exactly sure why that one's that low, but I'm sure that there's a reason for it. But if you have questions on things like that, let us know. We'll be happy to help out with it, okay? Here's the rest of them. I'm sorry. Latino household, other race household, and then white household. So just some median income data. Next few slides are dealing with the percent of the population that is below poverty in your area. We have age breakout. We have a gender breakout. We have ethnicity breakout, and then an educational attainment breakout. On the next page, again, these are the numbers as well. We have here for the different age brackets, and then the gender numbers. And the same thing on the next two slides here, the number of people in each of these before we just gave percentages. And here's the numbers associated with those. Just to give you an idea of the unemployment rate in your area, and then we go from 1990 up through current 2019, and you can kind of see this is a really kind of a neat graph to show you exactly how the economy was affected by the recessionary periods. And in Illinois, you can kind of see, at least in the central region, that period between 2007 and really up till about 2013, those were our highest unemployment rates over the last 20 years. Next slide. This is a piece that was put together to give you all the current numbers for all of the targeted population types in the area. If there's any questions on any of this, certainly let us know, and we can dig into it a bit deeper. But we've got low income indicators from DHS, disability indicators, foster care, Department of Corrections. We got some numbers from them on the adult prison population, the parolee population, and folks that are in juvenile detention centers. And then the other indicators are the migrant seasonal farm workers, single parents, and adult population at risk, 18 to 6 or without a high school diploma, and then immigrants. So just some extra numbers there for you on some of the different targeted pops. Okay, this section here gets into some of the meat and potatoes, I suppose one could say, in the data. If you read through this page and the next page, this sort of explains what's going on in the rest of these maps that we're getting ready to look at. This first map here is basically the employment change from the fourth quarter of 2017 to the fourth quarter of 2018, okay? And what we tried to do here was, it's by county, okay? So you can look at the individual counties within each of your regions to see where the growth in employment really was within your region, okay? Like in the central region, you can see here there's a lot of different colors here. You can see over here, I believe that's Shelby County, was actually lost some jobs down a bit there, but most of the area was around normal. There were some Cass County up on the upper left had job growth, as well as I believe that's Pike. Adams County, actually, over on the far left had, no, that's not Adams County, I'm sorry. Sangamon, Morgan. Well, you can see the color, it's color coded, and you can see which areas, which counties in your area actually gained employment, okay? Remember, this first map here is for all industries, total non-farm jobs, okay? Then what we put on here is employment change. I'm not going to go through all these slides with all the maps, but we have a map for employment change and a map for the location quotient for each of the industries in your area, okay? Again, the employment change is simply that. It's over the year employment gain or loss, and it's by county for each of the counties in your area. One thing I would mention is that every now and then, especially in the southern part of the state, you'll see some of these that are in black. There was not enough data for the BLS publication standards to actually publish for those counties for that industry. Basically means that the industry was too small. There was suppression. Okay, so you will have that on some of them. But the next map, and we'll have this for each of them, this is your location quotient map. And remember what these are. This kind of tells you, all of these maps are intended to help guide what industries you're going to select to target for your region. Okay? Remember, we're wanting to look at primarily the leading and emerging industries are ones to pay attention to. Need to pay attention to all of them, but the location quotients are basically intended to show you if you have any type of an advantage in your area. Anything over a 1 on the location quotient means that you have a higher concentration in your area of that industry. If we look at the central region here, I believe it's Macoupin County has a higher location quotient in construction. So that would mean that, that there's more activity in that sector than most of the other counties in this region. Okay. And we're going to go through, I'm just going to kind of flip through these real quick. These are just the rest of the industries and the associated maps with them, the employment change map and the location quotient map. We also listed underneath that the education and health services is what we would call the 2-digit NAICS code here. And then the different codes that are under the 3-digit, the 2- and 3-digit codes that are under that are listed below each of the industries. Like in education and health services, you've got educational services, and you also have healthcare and social assistance. And under healthcare and social assistance, these are the different breakouts, okay? It includes the ambulatory healthcare services, hospitals, nursing homes, and social assistance entities. We'll go on through these, but you should use these maps to help determine which industries you're going to select for your area. And I would also tell you, if you don't understand some of this or you're not sure about this, please let us know. We will help. We'll walk you through this stuff. We will help you with it. Okay.
Would you mind spending a second and show them how the information sector breaks out? Because that's one that if you just look at the title without digging into it, could send you down the misleading path.
Yeah. Information sector, folks, is not IT, okay? The information sector, as you can see on here, is your media types of things, okay? It is the publishing industries, your newspapers, your magazines, your any kind of print materials. Motion picture, sound recording, there's not a whole lot downstate, but there is some in the Chicago area. Broadcasting, this is your TV stations, your radio stations, things like that, internet publishing and broadcasting, telecommunications companies. And then when you get down into the actual companies in an area that actually do some kind of information technology kinds of things, I don't like using names, but I'm going to in this case. There's a company in Springfield called LRS, Iranian Shoop. They're the kinds of data processing, hosting, and related services. That's the kind of company that would go into the information sector. Okay, this is where your hardcore, IT companies actually reside. But as we all know, the IT occupations are spread across virtually all industries, and that's why the last round we chose just IT occupations, and we treated them a bit different, knowing that it did cross all the different industries. But a good point, Mike, and this is your the information sector that you're seeing here. These are the subsectors that are included in that 2-digit NAICS level. Okay? Okay. Each of the data packets will have a chart exactly like this one, with different numbers, of course. But Mike spoke earlier about how some of the different industries can change. Like he said, statewide manufacturing was a maturing industry last time, and here's what he really meant by that. Remember, at the time when we did that, the manufacturing was still at it was at a fairly high level. But then after the recessionary period, during the recessionary period, we lost a lot of jobs statewide in manufacturing. And now the level of manufacturing is much lower in the state. But now we're at a point where we're starting to grow again, okay, in the manufacturing jobs. That is what has changed the the manufacturing sector from basically being a maturing industry to a leading industry, because it's now growing again. Okay, have we made it back to the to the level of employment that we were before the recession? No, but currently it is, and it's projected to grow. Mike also mentioned that basically what we have here is our projections data for the industry. Okay, and you can see the ones that are coded in blue are certainly ones that, if I were you all, these are your larger industries, and the ones that I think would be ripe for choosing to be included in your targeted industry list. And then the emerging industries are the ones in the tan colored box, certainly important industries, and these are ones that are growing as well. Again, what this stuff is intended to do is help you choose the different industries that you're going to select for your area. Next, this is simply a bubble chart of this stuff right here. It's the concentration, the location quotient, basically. It's this column here, graphed out on a bubble chart, which is right here. And it kind of shows you the emerging industries that are, the change in employment. These are all growing. Anything on the right side of the vertical axis these are all growing, and the ones to the left, the information, is actually slightly declining a little bit, but it makes sense, folks, because remember that the information sector is not IT ops. It's the media people, and you know how much like newspapers certainly are that type of industry. Printing industries are going. I mean, they're losing employment simply because of people aren't printing as much stuff. They're getting things online nowadays. So this chart should make sense to you, but again, it's just another aid in helping you decide what industries you're going to choose in your area. Okay, now that we've talked about industries, let's switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about occupations. One of the items that was mentioned over and over was that the last packets really didn't address a lot of occupational information, so we tried to put more occupational information in these packets. Basically what we have here is this is a supply gap analysis for occupations requiring short-term, long-term, or moderate-term on-the-job training. Supply gap ratio, I'm going to just read this to you, just so we're clear on this thing. Supply gap ratio is a proxy measure that provides insight on how closely the supply aligns with the demand for selected occupations. The calculation of the ratio is simply supply divided by demand. In this case, the supply is the number of program completions in the region associated with the occupation, and the demand is the estimated number of regional job openings. The occupations with the smallest values at the top of the chart are the ones with the largest gap between the supply and the demand for that occupation. Basically, what this is telling us, folks, is this. Office clerks, general office clerks, that is the #1 occupation that has the largest supply gap. And what this is saying here is that basically look at this chart as the demand for these occupations is much greater than the supply, than the current supply. Now, with that said, the supply data, let's talk about it for a minute. The supply data for all of these next few slides is based on the data that we received from the Illinois Community College Board and the Board of Higher Education. These are, look at this as the new completers, okay? These are newly graduated people that are, ready to work in these occupations. What this does not include, I'll use electricians as an example. The unions, the local trade unions that are in the area, their apprenticeship programs, we don't have that data on the number of completers there. So I guess what I'm saying is that a lot of this supply data is probably larger than what we used in here, but we used the Community College Board and Board of Higher Ed data to create these next few charts. So just remember that the supply could be a bit larger than what we're showing on some of these, okay? This is the one, we broke them out into 4 different categories. Here's the one for short-term, long-term, and moderate-term on-the-job training. This one is ones that require some type of a certificate, okay? The next one is occupations requiring an associate's degree, and then the last one on here is a bachelor's degree or higher. Mike, is there anything else that you would like to add in on the supply data and the limitations of what we are showing here?
Just a couple of things. One thing to remember too, completers are not the only source of supply. You also have folks that are already working in the industry that could go back and forth, but you have unemployed people that,
That's right,
that have skills that are not captured by this. So depending on how many unemployed people you got floating around that were in one of these occupations before, those also would be part of the supply. But with the unemployment being as low, the rate being as low as it is now, probably not a whole lot of people across those, unless there's been a layoff at a particular company in a region that flooded the gates. But you guys will be much more on top of that locally, knowing the situation in your regions, than we would be able to show you from BLS data. Ron, would you mind speaking to how the occupations that made it to this chart got there, and how those were the Learn More and More rating?
Yep, absolutely. Well, one other thing I want to mention also about the supply data is this. What you have to do to create these ratios like this supply gap ratio is this. We had to do sort of a crosswalk between all of the completer data from BHE, Board of Higher Ed, and the Community College Board are all done on a program, the different programs what is it, the CIP? It's called the CIP code. Help me out, Mike. SIP is, no, it's the codes that I'm sorry, I can't remember right now, it's on my mind, but it's the codes that all of the different programs that each of the schools have what they call a CIP code, okay? And we had to crosswalk these SIP codes to the SOC codes for each of these occupations, okay? There is...
All right, sorry, I was muted. It's classification of instructional programs. So it's the code that educational institutions apply to those programs of instruction.
And there is not a direct correlation between an SOC code and a SIP code. So some of the SIP codes were included, across different occupations, okay? Just so you know that. All of these occupations that are on all of these charts here, okay, all the 4 charts that we've got for gap analysis came from this piece right here. What this is I'm sure that most of you have heard of a publication that IDES has. It's called the Learn More, Earn More. And the publication that's on our website is all statewide data. What we did here was we went ahead and created a Learn More, Earn More, basically, for each of the individual regions, okay? And all of the occupations that are included on this Learn More, Earn More, and we've got them by all the educational attainment levels. We've got education beyond the bachelor's degree, and then bachelor's degree. Then we have associates, post-secondary vocational award, and then we have long-term, moderate-term, and short-term on-the-job training. But all of the supply gap ratio slides are based on these occupations, because these are the occupations. We vetted all these occupations out. Everything had to have had a certain level of openings, and that was determined by each of the regions. Chicago region, the threshold was much higher, as you can probably imagine. And then it had to have met the experience wage had to have been higher than the experience wage for all occupations. So there were some cuts that we made on all of these, but these are specific to each of your areas, okay?
Hey, I would also point out, Ron, if you could jump back to the long-term OJT chart.
Yep.
Thank you. So when you're looking at the occupations that are not typically fed through the community college or the higher education system, that's where the supply data is going to have the largest hole in it, because BHE doesn't capture those apprenticeship programs and other things like that Ron mentioned. But as you go up into the educational attainment threshold, when you get into the associate's degree, when you get into bachelor's degree and beyond, then that gap ratio is much closer to capturing the entire supply, because we are capturing all the stuff, most of the stuff anyway, as far as people going into education programs that lead to a particular occupation. So, as you go lower, you've got to take it with a larger grain of salt. But as you go higher up the educational attainment, the data is more and more closer to reality.
Yep. One other thing that I did not mention as I was going through these slides is that the value of 1 is equilibrium. Okay, if you see a value on all of these, everything that's on here, supply is much shorter than the demand. But when you get down to, here's a good one here, between actors and accountants and auditors and chief executives, you see we go from 0.69 to over 1. So 1.47 on chief executives, that means we have an oversupply. okay, as well as the rest of the occupations on this list. These are oversupplied, and accountants and auditors on up are ones that are undersupplied. Thanks for pointing that stuff out, Mike. Appreciate it. Okay, and then the last couple slides that we have on here are basically the completer data from the Community College Board, and it just shows the different schools and the number of degrees and graduates that they have cranked out. And I believe this is fiscal year 2018 is the data on this, okay?
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, and then it kind of shows you the statewide totals. If you look down here, the statewide totals are on there too, and the percent of the state total that these three schools actually accounted for those degrees. And then on the last slide on each of the packets, we break it down by the different degrees that were attained by the graduates. Okay. That is pretty much it for the data. One thing I would want to offer to everyone is this. Please, if you have any questions on this stuff, or if you want to take a deeper dive into any of this stuff, please let us know, and we'd be more than happy to sit down with you, walk you through the stuff, or if there's anything that we have not captured in this data packet, let us know, and we will get it for you. If
Ron, we do have a few questions in the
Okay.
question box. The first one that is pretty just recently asked. Does the IBHE data include private schools or just public colleges and universities?
Any accredited 2- or 4-year school, basically, is exactly what all of that data includes. So yes, it does include private institutions as well.
And then on the next one, talking about the SIP codes and the SOC codes, could you share your SIP to SOC code crosswalk? We have one that we created, but we'd like to be consistent with what the state is using. Do you have one, and can I make it available?
Good question, and yes. If anyone would like that, it's a large file, but I could supply that to you. Yes, I can. If you would, whoever would like to have one of those, if they would send me directly an email, I will make sure that you get it.
Okay, and one, this is goes back to Mike. Actually, going back to that question, do you have your email listed in your presentation?
Well,
if not, I can put it out there.
I can't remember if, Mike, did you have that on the first slide or not? I don't remember.
No, I did not put our emails on them. Mine is michael.baker@illinois.gov.
And mine is Ron, ron.payne@illinois.gov.
Another question. What I'll do is in the chat box or question box, I'll put both of your emails just as soon as I get through. Sorry, one more question that we had. And it is, are higher education completers unique for the region or total for the institution?
I'm sorry, one more time on that?
Sure. Are higher education completers unique for the region or total for the institution? I'm not sure I understand.
I'm not quite sure about that either.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. That's a good question. We'll have to check into that and let you know.
Okay.
One other thing that I want to mention as well. Are there any more questions, Scott?
No, they're not.
Okay. One other thing that I will want to mention as well is when you all are selecting the industries that you're going to target, another piece that we didn't add it to the data packets because we don't know exactly what industries you're going to choose for your regions. But once you are dialed in on a sort of a 2-digit, you know, the major industry in your area, we can at that point provide you with subsector data. Let's say manufacturing, for example. If you're just looking at manufacturing as an industry you want to target, we'll get you the data we'll look into your particular economic development region, and determine which of the subsectors within manufacturing are prevalent in your area. And then we can go in and find out the top occupations in that subsector, and then get the completer data, the IBHE and community college data, and show you exactly how many people were graduating in the different areas for that occupation. And we can do that at the 3-digit level, okay? The next level, for example, like manufacturing is a 2-digit level. And then a 3-digit level would be like heavy equipment manufacturing. We can go into heavy equipment manufacturing, locate the top occupations within that subsector of manufacturing, and then match that up with the supply data to give you a better idea of, you know, what you're dealing with in your areas. I just want everyone to know that that data is available. Obviously, you'll have to let us know what the industries are that you've selected for your area. And again, if you need any help selecting any of the industries, let us know. We'll sit down with you and walk you through this stuff. And with that, I am finished.
Okay. We do not have any other questions in the question box, and I appreciate your time and the information.
Oh, we should also add that based on some early feedback, we made some adjustments to the regional data packets, and those have been uploaded to Illinois WorkNet. So if you haven't been there lately, you should pull down the updated version off of Illinois WorkNet and make sure you're working from that.
And to that end, they were just, the updated packets were just loaded at about 9:15 this morning. So if you've not gone to WorkNet to get the latest, that's how recent that it was updated.
Okay, I did get a question just a moment ago. If it shows that a region has lost 0.2 jobs, what kind of numbers does that equate to?
Well, that percentage would be a total of whatever percentage of the total jobs in that area. So if what was the question? If an area has lost 0.02?
Like, which chart are they looking at? I want to make sure that we're answering the right question.
Are they? They're not looking at supply gap stuff, are they?
It doesn't. Cindy says no.
So what chart were you, or what page of the packet is that question based on?
Cindy, can I open your microphone?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Cindy doesn't have the microphone available.
Okay.
I would tell that person, I mean, if they want to send me an email, I'm happy to answer a question. I'm just not exactly sure which one, which slide she was referring to.
Okay. And I've made both Mike's and Ron's email available.
Okay, so could you repeat that question that was in the box, please, Scott?
Sure. So Cindy asks, if it shows a region has lost 0.2 jobs, what kind of numbers does that equate to? And she says it was the 0.2 is just an example.
But is it related to the chart that Ron is showing here, or is that related to one of the maps?
I'm wondering if it was one of these employment or location quotient maps up in here.
Yeah. Cindy says it was
I
in
can
the
tell you this
mapping.
much:
It was in the maps.
0.02% loss is very small, no matter what you're measuring against. Not much of a difference. I would hesitate to even call it a loss.
Okay. And she says,
Did you have some clarity on that, Scott?
she said it was in the maps area as you're showing. And she says,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. So the employment change is merely the up-down view from one point in time to another point in time. How did employment change in that sector in that county? Okay.
And remember, all these maps are simply a 1-year change. It's from
fourth quarter 17.
Fourth quarter 28 to 17 to 18, exactly. And if anyone wants to see like the trend of an industry over a longer period of time than that, and we have the projections data at the end of these maps, but if anyone wants to see, what has manufacturing done in my industry over the last 10 years, last 15 years, let us know. We can provide that to you. But just keep in mind that these maps are simply a 1-year change. Okay?
And the thing to keep in mind with the maps also is try not to get hung up on, is it 2.4 or is it 2.8 or is it 2.8 versus 3.6. What you're looking for is, where are the wild swings? Where is something growing like gangbusters? Where is it shrinking like gangbusters? Where are the extremes? Because most places are going to be in the middle. But you probably ought to be aware of where something is happening on a bigger level. So the idea of the map is just to give you a sense of where this stuff is happening. We have all this data, the up and down, etc., but nowhere in the past have we tried to show you where it's happening, other than giving you a large, or having all of us look at a large table of data and find a county, and one by one then you have to compare. The map is just a visualization to let you get a quick grasp on where things are happening, and is the direction going up or down, or do you have an advantage over the rest of the country based on the number of people employed in that industry in your county. And if you do have an advantage, is it a small one or is it a large advantage?
Mm-hmm.
We do not have any other questions in the box.
All right. I would just urge anyone and everyone, if you have any questions on this, please let us know. Don't let this stuff confuse you. We'll help you with it, okay? And again, if there's something that you would, some data that you would like that is not in this packet, let us know. And if it's out there somewhere, we'll find it. All right? Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Have a great holiday, everyone. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thanks.